So now we could get the panel to come up, and I also would like for Monty to join the panel so that we can ask him questions and give him a chance to respond to all that David had to say. We'll put you down at the end. Yeah, well, first we want to yeah. First, we want to talk to Monty, and then we'll open it up more for a broader discussion. But so, Monty, that was a lot. David covered a lot, and we wanted to give you a chance to respond to what he said, and then see if anybody has any questions. Any of the panel members have any questions for you.
Well, luckily, my response is fairly short, in that I concur with his observations and criticisms and recommendations, in that and that it would be worthwhile certainly looking at those. And the one thing I will point out about, he talked about site significance and determinations of eligibility, is that those are usually addressed during the permitting process, and we're operating at for the EBD research and for post EBD. We've been working under an identification level effort where we're just going out and locating sites and briefly describing them. And a lot of his criticisms and recommendations would occur after that, once we begin a new phase of our research post the identification level efforts.
Okay. Just as a follow-up, since I know some of the research is ongoing, is there any of the things that David's covered part of what you're now doing that you might want to address?
We've started developing more predictive models. We're working on those, and those are, of course, based in are theoretical. We've collected more carbon samples, and we're in the process of developing the summary of sites by time periods, although our carbon samples are limited, and often diagnostic artifacts are also limited as well. And with our development of the predictive model, we are discussing the linkages between resource change and human adaptation. And also within that, we are ground truthing a lot of the interview identified sites when we're looking at areas where ground disturbing activities occur.
I noticed that Stephen is standing back there, and I wonder if we'll give you a chance to speak to some of this, because I know you're part of the research.
Thank you. This is Stephen Brondauer. Thank you. I just wanted to help Monty out a little bit here, a little longer-term perspective. Granted, we had an environmental baseline document, but one of the real motives for this is exploratory drilling going on. And the level of effort you've seen in the cultural resource investigation is associated with exploratory drilling program. So this is really pre-permitting. There hasn't been an application for a permit. So in that respect, it's an extraordinary effort for exploratory drilling. If you look at other mining organizations and companies in Alaska, you're not going to see that huge effort that's gone on. You saw the number of trips and the number of years that we've put into this for an exploratory drilling program pre-permitting. Second, The transportation corridor has purposely been left out at this time, the survey of that, waiting for a center line, if you will. When that time comes, if there's a center line, then the expanded area around that corridor, how wide would you do that survey? That's all to be determined in the future, and we would certainly implement the zone of indirect effects, not just a direct footprint effect. The downside of waiting to get a center line is that you don't get necessarily cultural resource information into the decision process of where you may be going to put that corridor, but that's still a little premature. I don't think Pebble has come up and said, oh, it's going here or there, so that's still in the future. We do expand the areas around where we do the surveys already. I mean, when we look at the drill collar locations, we go out in a pretty broad area out beyond them. So that is being done, and we're constantly, as David mentioned, we're constantly reviewing our method every year. It's evolved over time. We look at the high potential areas. We have huge discussions in our office looking at the low potential areas. We've got to have some balance in this. So we are continually doing that. There are probably 6 to 8 archaeologists working on this. They probably agree on very little among themselves. So we have very vibrant discussions about what we are doing, should be doing, and so on daily. And so that I think there is that kind of dialogue going on. Let's see, the low probability we do that. I was going to mention, oh yeah, and ground truthing the oral history. We do that specifically, and my hat's off to Monty for that. He came on at board. We'd done a bunch of those interviews, and he, frankly, every time he was going somewhere, he took them with him and said, okay, we're going to go out and see, are they in fact there? And so we are making an endeavor to do that. We have not, we've played with and haven't done much with predictive modeling. We've spent time on that, but I mean, that's one that we could evolve into. But then again, the real motive here for the mining company is before they have a ground disturbing activity, have they done a cultural resource clearance? And we're more than doing that. We're doing that 110%. So that's really what they're responsible for doing. And then the rest of this is all what would be interesting and good to know, what would be ideal to know under ideal circumstances. And we've stretched that margin out, I think, quite a bit. You know, we haven't characterized Southwest Alaska based on what we've learned in these summers of field investigation, and I think that's really good that this kind of forum happens after when we get a permit from OHA every year to go out on state land. We have to turn in a report before we go out the next year. So really what the documents are, the major documents for this project are those annual reports that go to the Office of History and Archaeology. From those, we put together the environmental baseline chapter for cultural resources. And I think that it's after 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, look at those number of years, it's good to have this kind of forum to say, okay, and I heard that this morning as well, now you've done all this activity, you've got all these individual reports, you know, maybe the question is now is, what does it all mean? What do you stand back and how can you put this in a regional context? So that's still in front of this project because we don't have all the clear definitions of all the components. So anyway, I just wanted to kind of go down your list and provide some context.
Great.
Yeah, I have absolutely no disagreement with any of those comments. At the risk of this sounding like a love fest or something, I just, want to. I think that it's really just basically quibbling around the edges, and a lot of it probably does have to do with things that are either being undertaken now or are going to come about at some later point in time, and I hope it actually is taken in that light. But I overall think that under not necessarily always easy conditions, the level of excellence of the archaeological reconnaissance, the survey, the compilation of existing data, and particularly the cultural resource interviews, second to none. And so my comments should really be seen in that light. So.
Are there any other questions for Monty or Stephen or comments from the panel members before we kind of end the panel discussion and move to the open discussion.
I'd just like to make one point and to Stephen, and that is that we've known each other a number of decades, but you know, a panel like this, constituted like this, you're just going to expect requests for more data. That's just the way it is.
Thank you, Don. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and open, we've got about an hour before lunch, so why don't we go ahead and open up questions and comments from the public and from the web stream. And those would be addressed to both the recreation chapter in that review and also the cultural resources chapter. And again, we're going to talk about subsistence this afternoon, so that's not part of this discussion. But and then when we have some web questions, I'll ask those as well. So I know there were some earlier ones that I cut off, so now's the time.